I work with hundreds of Australian retirees, and a common goal that I hear is that these people want to retire comfortably with $100,000 of annual income. So in this video, I want to break down roughly how much you need to be able to do that and some tips so you can ensure that your nest egg won't be depleted when drawing an annual income like this. As a financial advisor, specializing in supporting self-funded retirees, $100,000 is a pretty common target I hear from this group of people. And as many as 150,000 people are retiring each year, according to ABS data, yet few have any real idea what they need or how much they can actually afford from the nest egg that they have when they get to retirement. 100 grand is, yes, a very common goal, and many people, it will sound like a lot to many people, and for a lot of people it will sound like it won't be enough either. But on its own, it makes no sense. We need to give it context, and we need to understand what that buys us in retirement and what we are giving up on an income of that. What does $100,000 actually get you in retirement? Now, the problem here is there aren't many sources of normal retirement income measures available in the industry. The industry's actually been quite bad at this. There's very few where you can go, this is what I did in my career profession, this is where I live, this is how much it's going to cost me in retirement. There is evidence from experience. So we've worked with thousands of families over several decades in the industry, and we see a band as broad as $80,000 to $120,000 per year for a couple, and some as high as $250,000 to $300,000 per year. There is one benchmark, and it's quite often quoted, and it is a quality starting point. This is called the ASFA Retirement Standard, and this is what's known as the go-to guide for benchmarking your retirement needs, but as we'll discuss, it isn't for everyone. So ASFA measures what's known as a comfortable and what's known as a modest lifestyle in retirement. For a single person, comfortable is around $53,000, and for a couple, it's $75,000. So let's call it 53 and 75K. What does it include though? This is the big question. What's included in a comfortable lifestyle? And we're not going to touch on modest in this one because our focus is talking about that $100,000 income. This $75,000 includes normal things like groceries, high-speed internet, top-level private health insurance with extras, home renovations over time, occasional restaurant meals, and importantly, an annual domestic trip, so one in Australia to see family, likely not to a more expensive destination, and one overseas trip every 7 years. This is the kicker. I don't know about you, but most people that I talk to that are pumped for retirement, have been working in decades, their entire life getting ready for retirement, is they want to travel more than once every 7 years. In the first 20 years of your retirement, that's only 3 sets of overseas travel, particularly when you're traveling to Europe or the US, which are particularly expensive. Now, 75K is a good base, so let's not throw it out. If you then add something like $10,000 or $15,000 for an annual overseas trip for a couple, which in my experience could actually be more like 20 to 25 if you're going for a period longer than 3 to 4 years, or even more regular domestic travel, a caravan purchase, more upgrades, then you're quickly going from $75,000 to $100,000 per annum, solely because you'd like to travel more in those early stages of your retirement. Obviously, if you're watching home, you probably say that's great to know, but how much do I actually need to generate this 75 plus 25 or about $100,000? This is the big and the most constant question asked by those I meet that are planning for their own retirement. So according to ASFA, and this includes the impact of the age pension, you only need $690,000 as a couple or $595,000 as a single to get the comfortable lifestyle level, assuming you retire at 67 years of age. This includes the age pension, and it includes you accessing the age pension at the first point possible. One of the keys here is that it solves to zero. That is, you'll have zero money on your assumed life expectancy, so it doesn't insure for the fact that you might live longer or you might live for a shorter period of time. As we get into a bit more detail on this modelling, it's worth looking at what the key considerations are and the key determinants of how much capital you need to generate $100,000 in retirement. One, your age at retirement. If you retire at 75 years of age, well, your average life expectancy is somewhere in the mid-90s, so you're only covering 20 years. But if you're retiring at 60, then you're talking about a 35-year period that you need to cover that income. The next one is how long you want your money to last. If you want it to last 20 years, you're going to need less capital than if you want it to last 40 years. Again, these are very arbitrary figures. They can't calculate or assume that you will live to 100 and 200. You have to make a decision on these to get any value from this modelling. You also need to consider whether you're a single or a couple. And for the purpose of this short analysis we're going to provide, it's important to note that we've excluded the age pension. And in most cases, for those generating income above $100,000 a year, you're unlikely to receive the age pension for a very long period of time. Let's assume a long-term return, which we think is quite reasonable, of 7%. That's assuming you've got around 70% of your assets in growth assets like shares, infrastructure and the like, and an inflation rate of 3% because we've seen the cost of living increase in recent years. And then you're drawing $100,000 per annum. So the $100,000 is increasing with inflation and the returns are also impacted by inflation. For this capital to last for 20 years, you will need $1.43 million drawing $100,000 per year. For it to last 30 years, you will need $1.89 million. And for it to last 40 years, you will need $2.2 million. So which one's the most relevant? As I mentioned, the data is showing that most people are now living into their mid to late 90s, particularly couples are living longer. So what you need to think about is between that 30 and 40 years. Now, I've previously talked about some other numbers when it's come to modelling, and these include the age pension, and they also adjust based on the level of risk that you're willing to take. So let's go back to some of these that we provided references to and which we've talked about in previous videos. Let's assume you want to retire at 60, as is the case for a lot of people, and you're invested into a balanced or a 50-50, so equally split between some are also known as a moderate asset allocation. In this case, you will need, according to the calculations, around $2.06 million for this money to last until your life expectancy. Interestingly, the modelling provided in these cases was based on inflation of 2.5% and the median long-term return of a similar asset allocation of 8.5%. This is built out of that Telstra superannuation calculator. So you can see here that the inputs that you're using to make these calculations are so central to determining how much capital you need, but the results are quite consistent. So we talked about $2.2 million for the last 40 years, and we talked about just over $2 million when you include the age pension. So they're very consistent around how much you need in retirement. Interestingly, if you want to fund the equivalent of $100,000 for a couple, which is estimated to be about $140,000, you actually need $2.85 million based on the same assumptions. And what I've found quite unique is that if you go and look at the Grattan Institute data, if you've got a balance in superannuation exceeding $2 million, you're likely in the top 5% of the wealthiest Australians in terms of the assets you've been able to accumulate through superannuation. This is all well and good, but there are some problems. And I constantly get asked this question, which is what is the problem with this analysis and this modelling? And the big problem is they all solve to zero. That is, they leave you nothing left at the end. It doesn't account for inheritances. It also doesn't account for the fact that you might outlive your life expectancy or die sooner than your life expectancy. Yet the vast majority of people I work with want to leave something to their children. They want to leave a legacy or provide more support to their children during their lives. And this just simply isn't included in such basic modelling. It's quite valuable as a starting point, but we need to work forward from there. One of the key roles advisors can play is how do you intertwine and adjust this modelling to be more personalised to you and to make sure that the decisions you're making today are well informed and you're not giving up your lifestyle in the future for support you're providing to your children today, because that's obviously very difficult to put into an annual income model. So if you're looking for 100K while also supporting your children, you need to be thinking about even more than the $2.1 and $2.2 million we've highlighted before. What do some people get wrong? And this is one of the big parts. There are a lot of things that people get wrong when they're starting to plan for retirement. These can actually see you end up working longer than you needed to. They aim for retirement income that is higher than they actually need. Some people just come and say, I want 100K. They haven't thought about it. They haven't modeled it. They haven't done cash flow analysis or a budget. They don't account for some expenses falling, some expenses increasing, the fact that they don't have to pay school fees or mortgage repayments anymore. So they've set their expectations too high. They also haven't done the work or sought advice on how much they actually need based on their personal objectives. This is one of the most common reasons that people work longer than they need to. That is, they think they need 100K, but they've already got $2 million in super, and compounding will likely take care of the rest of it. So they're still working towards a 65, 67, 70-year retirement age, despite being in a position where they could already do that. And ultimately, the risk here is that so many people miss out on many good years early in retirement when they didn't need to be working if they were informed and understood what their accumulated savings could get them. Another thing people forget is they forget to consider their house and the potential of the equity being released from this at different points in the future. Most people I see tend to change houses as many as 2 to 3 times during their retirement, including the potential of moving into aged care. And if I'm going to leave you with one thing to take away from this video, it will be that with all these outcomes and models, what consistently comes out as important is the need to combine both income and cash flow, the ability to spend money, the ability to have cash regardless of what's happening, with growth. In all these cases, the only way to maximize the probability that you don't outlast your capital is by investing for growth as well as income. If you found any of this insightful, or if you like the video, please give us a thumbs up and please follow the page and please subscribe.